Well, the latest Dem loyalist to turn is Karine Jean-Pierre. She has announced that she's going independent. And she not only has she announced that she's going independent, but this was the press secretary for Joe Biden up until the very end, and a loyalist up until the very end. And now she is going independent. This is what she has to say. She's got a new book out. Is this about selling books, or is this about truly going independent? You decide.
Hi, I'm Karine Jean-Pierre, and I am the author of a new book that's coming out this fall called Independent. It's coming out on October 21st, so please do grab it. And the reason I wrote this book, coming out of the White House, serving as White House press secretary was an honor and a privilege. But since I have left, the people that come up to me, strangers that come up to me just across the country as I'm traveling, and sometimes right in my neighborhood, at a grocery store, supermarket, airport, my daughter's school, the number one question they ask me is, Karine, how do we get out of this? How do we protect our democracy? How do we protect vulnerable communities among us? What do we do next? Because we don't have answers here. That's what they ask me. And this is my answer. And what I mean by that is, in an era of misinformation, disinformation, the regressiveness of social policy, what we're seeing currently right now, what I have decided to do, and I really have thought long and hard about this, is to follow my own compass. And that's what I've done. And that's what this book does. And here's the truth. And here's how I will lay it out to you. I think we need to stop thinking in boxes and think outside of our boxes and not be so partisan. And the way that I see moving forward in this space that we're in right now is, if you are willing to stand side by side with me, regardless of your how you identify politically, and as long as you respect the community that I belong to and vulnerable communities that I respect, I will be there with you. I will move forward with you. And that is, I think, so important. So this book, Independent, it's about looking outside of boxes, not just always being in a partisan stance. And how do we move forward together in a compassionate way, in a way that really, truly cares about people? October 21st.
Yeah, I think this is about selling books. I don't think she's actually becoming an independent, especially when she says things like, well, as long as you'll respect my community, my marginalized community, and the marginalized communities of those that she's using Democrat liberal language still, and she's claiming that she's an independent. She's not saying anything that actually turned her off from the Democratic Party. What was the breaking point for her? Like that, and all of that is missing completely. Instead, she says, look, it's just time for us to come together. So this just looks like a ploy to sell books. It's also looking like Democrats understand that the Democratic Party is just a giant loser right now. They don't have a plan. They don't have a goal. They're not changing course in order to win. They're just being clobbered, and actual voters are switching away from the Democratic Party. And so people inside the Democratic establishment are saying, well, then I guess I better switch too if I want to have a career, because I'm still young and I still might have a chance going forward. And I feel like that's what's going on with Karine Jean-Pierre. I also feel like that's what's going on with Matt Miller. He came out. Now, remember, State Department Spock, who was going out there constantly saying, no war crimes are being committed, or everything's just fine and hunky-dory in Israel, and making excuses day after day after day for Israel. And now he comes out, another Biden loyalist, another one that was spewing the lines, and he says, well, I was just Dems made me do it. I just said what I was being told. I just had to say what I was told. Watch this.
Do you think what's going on in Gaza now is a genocide?
I don't think it's a genocide, but I think I think it is without a doubt true that Israel has committed war crimes.
You wouldn't have said that at the podium.
Yeah, look, because when you're at the podium, you're not expressing your personal opinion. You're expressing the conclusions of the United States government. The United States government had not concluded that they've committed war crimes, still have not concluded that.
But did you get away with that if you were a Nazi, by the way? Wasn't that like, that's not actually an excuse? You can't just say, well, I was told to do it, so I did it.
They have.
And
they were while you were there.
But let me qualify that. There are two ways to think about the commission of war crimes. One is if the state has pursued a policy to deliberately committing war crimes or is acting reckless in a way that aids and abets war crimes. And that, I think, is an open question. I think what is almost certainly not an open question is that there have been individual incidents that have been war crimes where members of the Israeli military have committed war crimes. So ultimately, in almost every major conflict, including conflicts prosecuted by democracies, you will see individual members of the militaries commit war crimes. And the way you judge a democracy is whether they hold those people accountable.
But Israel hasn't.
That's my point,
Right.
is we have not yet seen them hold sufficient numbers of the military accountable, and I think it's an open question whether they're going to.
I'm really struck.
What about holding you accountable for standing there and saying this over and over and over again, every day, making excuses?
Now that Israel did commit war crimes, and yet at the time, and I get why, but at the time you were at the podium and you couldn't say that. I mean, personally, that must be very difficult for you.
So the State Department itself had concluded, not in these, they didn't phrase it in these terms, but I think I did at the podium a few times, had concluded that it was likely that Israel had committed war crimes. But I do think it's almost certain that they have.
I don't think he ever said that. And now he's saying, but it's certain that they have committed war crimes. But it was likely at the time, and the State Department concluded that, but they certainly have. I mean, this is a huge problem. You've got Karine Jean-Pierre, you've got Matt Miller, now they're coming out. It's been 6 months. Joe Biden's only been out of office for 6 months. They didn't take long, these guys, to suddenly flip and say, I was just told what to say. I didn't really believe it. It turns out I actually have different opinions and different feelings. And now I'm actually going to try to save my career by coming out and coming clean. And in reality, they're all just a bunch of liars. How do we know they're even telling us the truth right now? If they admit that they were lying at the podium, essentially, what makes us confident that they're not lying to us right now? And then here's Jake Tapper. We can't move on without talking about this Dem loyalist Jake Tapper, who recently came out with this book, Original Sin: President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and his disastrous choice to run again, when Jake Tapper was very much part of the cover-up. But here he is.
I'm curious as to whether or not this kind of trying to hide what was happening with the president at the time had an impact on the press corps. Like, why didn't we hear some of these details from what they actually saw and were dealing with trying to get information?
I got to say, I do love the press asking the press.
Alex Thompson and I were on the case, as were lots of other.
Yeah, so here's the press asking the press, why didn't the press cover Joe Biden's decline? That's rich.
Reporters trying to figure out what was going on behind the scenes. But the bottom line is the White House was lying, not only to the press, not only to the public, but they were lying to members of their own cabinet. They were lying to White House staffers. They were lying to Democratic members of Congress, to donors about how bad things had gotten. And in fact, Alex and I started writing this book after the election of 2024. And we spoke with more than 200 people, almost all of whom were Democrats, and almost all of whom wouldn't be honest with us or wouldn't be candid with us until after the election. And then after the election, we found out all of these things that when you looked at what was going on with President Biden at the time, it probably doesn't surprise you the extent to which he was deteriorating. But now we have anecdotes and facts about what was really going on behind the scenes with details that Democrats wouldn't share with us until after election.
Oh, I love this cover-up. This is just such a great cover-up. Well, they just lied to us, and we took them at face value. I mean, this is a reporter saying, they lied to us and we took them at face value. We just believed them. And so that's what we talked about. Rather than, they never once came on to CNN. Jake Tapper didn't once go on CNN and say, you know what, we haven't talked to the president in a long time. We're not getting access to him. There's been obvious incidences of him looking like he's slipping. Democrats are sitting there just telling us, no, all is well, but they won't give us access to him. Or maybe they were getting access to him and they were talking to the guy because they're the press and they saw that his mind was slipping and they chose not to report on that because of they're afraid of Donald Trump winning an election. We all know that's exactly what happened. They covered it up. Jake Tapper was part of the cover-up. CNN was part of the cover-up. And now they're acting like, it wasn't our fault. We were lied to. What is your job? You have a job. Your job is to get to the bottom. Your job is to not believe, face value, what the government tells you. That's your job. And yet, Oh, well, that's what they said. So what were we supposed to do? Your job? How about that? Your job. I mean, this is just, by the way, now CNN coming out with this, Jake Tapper coming out with this, they're thinking that, well, this might actually boost viewership or boost morale or the confidence of the viewers, right? Because viewers had lost complete confidence in the mainstream liberal media, especially after the debate with Joe Biden. And then suddenly, all of the people that were saying nothing's wrong with Joe Biden, this is a right-wing conspiracy theory, suddenly all of them were like, well, there's something wrong with Joe Biden. And oh no, we got to move him out. We got to move Kamala in. And it was just a concerted, clear, they all got the memo, that effort. And now they're acting like, well, now we have to build that trust because everybody saw what we did. Everybody watched us lie for years, and then they watched us flip and get together and force Kamala Harris down their throats. And now people don't trust us. So now they're doing this whole, we got to build trust. We got to be honest. And that's why you got Karine Jean-Pierre out there now. That's why you got Matt Miller out there now. That's why you got Jake Tapper, but it's not working. The network, according to Nielsen figures, which is the ratings, the show CNN averaged 525,000 total viewers from April 28th through May 25th, which is a drop of 25% from the same period last year. So it didn't work. Ever since Jake Tapper came out with this book, it didn't work. They're not building any confidence. Viewers aren't turning back to CNN and saying, well, now I can trust you guys. No, you lost all the trust. You lost all the trust. And now they're coming out and they're trying to pull the wool over our eyes by saying, oh, look, we're independent now. Or, you know what, I actually believed it was a genocide. Or, you know what, there was a big cover-up of Joe Biden's mental decline. And me as the reporter, Jake Tapper, had no idea. I just took them, the government lied to me. What do you want me to do about that? I mean, this is just so absolutely insane. We're living in a cartoon. None of them, but the big issue here is that they're lying to us. They've been lying to us. They get away with lying to us. This happens on both sides of the aisle, by the way. This isn't just a Democrat problem. This is both sides' problem. This is a political class problem. There is no other career where you could lie and lie and lie like this and then come out later and say, oh, I lied. I just said what they told me to say. Or, oh, I really didn't do my job. I just took them at face value and I'm a reporter. And still be able to keep your job. No other industry allows this. And yet, in politics, in the swamp, we do allow that. And that is something that we, the American people, have to stand up and say, we're no longer going to allow this. We're not going to allow you to champion the Iraq War and push for it and get our young kids killed and then advance in your career. It's just like during COVID, my co-host on Rising, Alyssa Farah, she was sitting there laughing at me when I said the vaccines don't stop the spread. I had the science clear as day. We all now know, without a shadow of a doubt, the vaccine does not stop the spread. And what happened to her career? She got promoted. She's sitting on The View, right? So, I mean, this is what happens to liars. This is what happens to people who don't actually do their job. They just spew the establishment line. They get promoted. They know they get promoted. And this is why they could come out and continue to bullshit us over and over and over again. And they know that the vast majority of people are unfortunately going to gobble it up. Thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson Show, which you can catch Monday through Friday, 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. We do live stream it every day. It's a 1-hour show. You can catch it. It is totally free. Just go to KimIversonShow.com. See you there.